It's my great pleasure to introduce and be on the stage here with our newest DDO learning partner, NextJump, from New York City and other parts. They're going to tell a lot about their story. All I'll say further for the moment is that we've met them recently as a result of some of the earlier writing that we did and have gotten to know them a bit. Have spent an intense period of time with them on site, and we can tell you that we're just enormously impressed with what they're doing and what they're up to and their commitment to developing everybody every day. I'm going to turn it over to Charlie Kim, their CEO, in just 1 second. I want to do a couple of logistical things. One is let you know that there are now note cards in the middle of each table. And so for the Q&A period, I'm going to ask 1 or 2 questions to sort of kick it off. But just as their presentation is ending, a couple of our folks will come around and collect whatever questions you might have. They'll be passing them up to me, and we'll get to as many as we can during our 25 minutes or so of Q&A. So that's how that's happening. So questions on the note cards. The second thing I'll just say is that the piece that Lisa went through with you is kind of identifying the challenges, the opportunities for your organization, for yourself, perhaps for a colleague. What we're hoping is that as you're listening to NextJump and the other presenters, that you'll kind of have that context in mind and almost in a sense be kind of trying on some of these sort of things that you're going to hear from them, say, how might that relate to the challenges that I've been describing already this morning? How might this relate to the reality that I've been describing? We want to say that this is a big room, okay? And it's big enough for lots of different kinds of reactions, okay, to what you'll hear, whatever your reaction may be. Okay, so it's a big room. So whatever your reaction is, we can hold it here. Okay, so it's our pleasure to introduce NextJump, and let me turn it over to Charlie Kim. Okay.
So just to give you a quick context, I can't express how honored and proud we feel to be up here, given where we came from. So 20 years ago, in June of 1994, I started NextJump in my college dorm room. So started literally from a high school sweetheart relationship I couldn't pay and afford to keep alive, and started a company to pay for phone bills, to keep dating this girl that I ended up not marrying, but her father became the first investor. He's going to make a lot of money, so they're going to be very happy. We grew the business to 150 employees, and then in the first dot-com boom and then the bust, we got down to 4 people. So it's myself, Megan, and 2 other individuals. And there's a window in January 2002 where we had 6 eviction notices. I had bloody noses every single day for 60 days straight. We had the worst of the worst you can imagine, and we fought through and survived, and have built back up to be one of the largest players in the e-commerce space, with 200 employees, of which 75% are engineers. So to give you that context, let me take you through, this is a headline that was selected from a news article fairly recently, that culture is notoriously difficult to define, and much less measure. And what I hope to do in the next hour is to show you that culture is universally definable, and when right, the results are measurable. So taking insights, lessons, tremendous struggles and pain that we've gone through as a company, going uphill till we got to the other side of the hill. So this talk, just really quick, I'm going to show you a couple of short videos of our culture just to give you a flavor and taste. Talk about the context of why culture is the single most important strategy, the ultimate strategy in any company today. When you think of culture, most people do not think of programs that are typically in HR, talking about how you hire, how you onboard, how you develop your staff, how you do recognition, performance evaluations, even giving back. We'll talk about some of the programs we have there, and then touch back on at the end of this universal definition of culture, which I hope some people will find insightful and adopt with you, and then show you some results, measuring impact both on a primary as well as secondary data-driven side. So stories and testimonials, which Megan, my chief of staff, and Elise will share, as well as myself, and then giving you some more data behind it. So just really quick, I'm going to take you through a first video. So to give you context, this video is about one of the most important recognition programs we have in the company called the Avengers Award. It's no different than the Medal of Honor. It's to honor the servant leader in our company. There's a 90-day window, 60 to 90 days, where employees literally vote on who is the #1 servant leader in the company. A peer committee will then go through and interview hundreds of people in the company down to find the one individual who is awarded the Avenger. And this award is given, and we believe the idea of helping others succeed in the company is something that's so important. We dedicate this award to our mothers who are happiest when we are both happy but also help others. And so we hide the mother of the recipient in the audience, flown in from wherever they are. So I'm just going to show you a quick video, and this was last year's ceremony of Avengers.
So now Charlie's going to announce the 2013 Avengers Award winner.
So we don't have Ernst & Young, but we have KPMG. So KPMG, I understand, helped audit these results. And in here lies the envelope. One of these 6 is our grand winner of the 2013 Avengers. I think not to take away the other 4, I mean, this is the team, the 5, that has protected the company, that has helped the company grow to where it is this year. And we've had a record year that has been 19 years of historical growth and has done phenomenally well. So it's the work of the Avengers and what they've done. Without further ado, I will open the envelope. It's the 2013 grand prize winner of the Avengers Award is Gory.
They've just flown in from India. Honored to introduce Gauri Lakshmi Narayanan as a 2013 Avengers winner. Gauri is an Avenger because he is always there for you. He is incredibly loyal, infectiously sweet, and helps you accomplish anything. In his 5 years at NextJump, he has come to the aid of many, and likely while doing so, has made you laugh or taught you something about the game of chess, his great passion. I don't think that there is another person filled with as much goodness as Gauri. It is a pure quality. Lokia, his manager, describes it as the ability to help with his whole heart. So let me tell you a story about how Gauri is always there for you. On the night of Hurricane Sandy, I'm working from home and encounter a problem on an email campaign I'm building for a client launch that's on the West Coast. At this point, everyone has gone home, is offline, prepping to brave the storm. But I take a chance, and I go online, and I see a green dot next to Gauri's name, because I swear there's always a green dot next to his name. I ask if he's available to help me. He quickly replies and starts helping me with my problem online. But then his green dot turns red. A few minutes later, my phone rings. It's Gary. I'm sorry, the internet's gone out here in Jersey. I'm calling, I hope that's okay. We begin troubleshooting over the phone. Then he pauses and he says, "Oh, I can see Manhattan. It's just gone dark." And then he goes back into one-on-one troubleshooting my problem. A few minutes later, he pauses again and goes, "Oh, my power has just gone out. The end is near, Rachel. What else can I help you with?" I mean, the Northeast is completely shutting down, and he probably would have drained his phone battery and leapt across buildings if I'd asked him to. He is that dedicated. An Avenger is someone who will go to battle for you day in and day out. In stormy skies, they stick around. In the face of an apocalypse, Gory is there by your side, selflessly serving you with a smile. Gory, I know that you would sacrifice yourself before allowing any next jumper to be checkmated. We want to recognize you for this incredible steward leadership. Charlie will now pin Gory with his Avengers Medal. Please join me in congratulating him in recognition as the 2013 Avengers winner, the highest honor at Next Jump.
So we have 300 people in the audience, family members, close friends, even some clients. There was not a dry eye in the room as he went through this celebration. So that being a quick flavor of, I want to talk about this context of why culture is the most important strategy in every single company today. So when you look at the world and you look at the economies and industries and different companies, think back way to the agricultural economy when land was the single most important asset. Machines didn't matter as much, people didn't matter as much. Whoever had the best land and whoever fed it the best nutrients, fertilizers, were going to be the winners. Well, the industry changed, and the whole economy moved to a manufacturing industry. And as it moved to manufacturing, what you found was machines was the single most important asset, and people were replaceable. And in fact, how you oiled your machines, how you took care of your machines was much more important than any other factor. Well, if 90% of the US population made a living in factories or in the manufacturing economy, it's stated that 15 years or so, 90% of the country will drive its living working in some information capacity. So in the information capacity, your number one asset is not land, it's not machines, it's people. So what is the fertilizer? What is the oil that you feed people? And so this word comes up, this word of culture, and everyone will talk about culture, yet nobody quite knows what culture is. If you ask this room, I bet you'll find 100 different definitions of culture. It's this amorphous thing, no different than walking into someone's house and not sure what is different about this household versus another household. No one can quite describe it. So we got to understand culture at a very interesting way through a huge constraint. You'll find that generally out there, innovation doesn't occur because you have a lot of money, because you have a lot of people. It actually occurs because you have some of the biggest problems. Constraints. Constraints drive innovation. When it comes to talent today, hiring human capital, the single hardest talent group to hire are engineers of mobile and internet technology. In fact, they're so in demand, even last year, there were 3 million open job positions for engineers that were unfilled in the US alone. 3 million open job positions for engineers last year, unfilled. This industry, this field has negative unemployment. Nobody's unemployed unless they choose to be. And so this is a picture of a hackathon. And so this challenge is what drove our insights on culture and learning, which we hope to share with you. So when companies think of culture, a lot of companies and a lot of industries will say technology. Technology industries is where the greatest innovation in culture is occurring. And we heard this from BCG consultants, from the mayorship of New York City. They did a lot of studies saying tech is a place where you should go to see how culture is being innovated. Yet culture is seen to be typically free food, color paint on walls, basically a list of perks and benefits. And it becomes an arms race of who has more perks, who has better perks, who has more shocking perks. That is not culture. So I'm going to take you through a very simple definition of culture, and then we'll back it up with more details in what we call our HR programs. So culture can be seen in a very simple formula, very similar to Daniel Pink's, the whole mastery, I think it's mastery, autonomy, and purpose. But we removed autonomy out because we find that that's not a lever. So the notion is that if you build culture correctly, you're going to get true wealth. True wealth meaning long-term sustained happiness, not short-term immediate happiness, but over the long run. It's no different than raising children. You're looking for happiness and success in the long run, and there are two things that you feed into it. And the reason why what you feed in is important is because we all tend to get so outcome focused. You can't move the lever. You can't move the needle by being outcome focused. You have to focus on the process. And the process that we discovered with the help of a lot of experts is two things that drive human beings. It's the ability and constant focus on growth, so you have to grow yourself, but then for a higher purpose of helping others. We came up with a simple, easy to remember line called better me plus better you equals better us. Everything we do culturally is put into these two buckets. You can use whatever language you want to use, take ours if you want, but it's going to sound somewhat like growth plus purpose. So we have over 50 programs in the company. I'm not going to take you through every single one. You're welcome to visit any of our offices, especially here in Boston, or Cambridge, I guess. Cambridge as well as New York, or London, or San Francisco. But the whole oxygen mask theory, when you go on the plane, you must take care of yourself before you take care of others. And where it's misunderstood for a lot of groups is that in order to be able to serve others and go the distance, you have to take care of yourself first. However, if you only take care of yourself, it's like having a cup that's filling up, and then when it fills to the top, you upgrade the size of the cup. And you keep upgrading versus you should overflow your cup onto others, and then upgrade, fill up, overflow onto others. It's a back and forth process of both. Just really quick what we do as a business. We have two goals in the company. One is what we call the Next Jump goal, and the other one is what we call the Next Jump project. That's the more audacious and more important goal to us. So as a goal, being in the tech space, our goal is to become a top 10 global tech company. To be a top 10 global tech company, we need to reach 50 billion in revenues, and we're currently on trend to get there 5 years fast, 10 years slow. So that's exciting and that's great, but we focus much more on this audacious goal. The goal is that we can change the world. We can fix most of the problems in the world if you can help change workplace culture. So this is why we share and give away everything we know. We don't charge for it. Anything you like, I think we have copies of these slides we'll be happy to send you as well. So culture can also be seen as HR programs. Things that you typically put into hiring, onboarding, development, recognition, performance evaluations, and giving back. And all these programs have a lot of challenges and mistakes, and we've rifled through many of the worst possible mistakes that a lot of companies still operate under. And so we'll take you through some of the mistakes to give you a sense of how we got to where we are today. So going into hiring. And hiring is interesting. So I'll give you some context of how we got to where we are in hiring. Starting in 2006, we invested heavily in college recruiting. And college recruiting is important because if you want to build innovation in a company, the young population does it better. The simple reason is because they do not know what's possible. They're what we call ignorance and fire. They will help you innovate. You need some help. You need senior experienced people to keep them in check and help nurture the growth, but they are the ones who will help you innovate. So looking for engineers, the 4 largest East Coast engineering schools are MIT, Cornell, Georgia Tech, and Carnegie Mellon. So we chose in 2006 to invest in college recruiting. A very difficult process. We brought on a board member, picked the brains of what Google had done, what Amazon had done, and took their process, and their process was one of the most robust interview processes. You get a thumbs up or thumbs down for every interview, and there is no maybes in between. So if you get 11 interviews occurring, if you don't get a unanimous 11 thumbs up, you don't hire. A single thumbs down is enough not to hire. And this process works well to one degree, but we ended up hiring this room and army of brilliant jerks, incredibly smart, driven people. Drive is a common characteristic that a lot of managers, hiring managers will say, I hire the most competitive, driven person. And you hire stunningly brilliant, competitive people. Before you know it, something will be missing. And so we dug in and looked, and after 2 years of tremendous investment in hiring, one day we literally fired half our engineering staff. We fired them in one flip, one go, and tremendous lessons, but we looked at the group that stayed. These were rock star engineers, and what is the quality they had that those other people we let go missed? And we found that humility was the single ingredient that was more important to hire for than anything else. And that's a lesson we took, and then we kept recruiting and hiring, and then by 2010, we became the top destination for engineers coming out of these 4 East Coast engineering schools. But then as soon as we hit that top spot, huge problems occurred. Turnover skyrocketed almost overnight to 40%. Now 40% sounds like a big number, however, in our industry, it's actually pretty common, because the shortage of tech talent is so high, the capital is so much. An average engineer in our company was getting 6 solicitations a week to move jobs, to move companies, at double to triple their salary within less than 1 year being at Next Jump. All of 2010, 2011, we could not move this number down. But we kept investing heavier in culture, kept doubling down, kept investing heavier, and for the last 2.5 years, our turnover has been at less than 1%. 1-2%, low single digits. We've been able to retain all the engineers. So some of the insights on hiring, people always ask us this insight on humility, but how do you interview for humility? What is the way to interview? So what we found was this, the reason why humility is important and also misunderstood, it's not about finding the meekest person. It's not about the person who's quiet and meek, but it's about the person who's open-minded to the idea of others. And so when we drill into the interview, we do a 45-minute interview on humility alone. And if you fail that interview, you get a thumbs up or thumbs down, no matter how bright, how accomplished you are, we do not hire you. So when we think about humility, the 3 things that we interview for. One is people who are grateful versus people who are entitled. Gratitude is a precursor for humility. People who are responsible. When something is wrong, you drill in what happened. They point to themselves and the insight they learned versus victims point outwardly. It's always the stock market, it's some outside force, my manager, the budget, someone else is to blame for their mistakes. And probably the single most ingredient we screen for is what we call investment in loss. A deliberate practice outside your comfort zone. And that's different than the know-it-all. The know-it-all doesn't move beyond the comfort zone because they know everything. You want to hire someone who is practicing and falling, and when you simply ask them, when's the last time you invested in loss to practice out of your comfort zone? And someone says, 5 years ago, that's not a hire that you want to make. The person hasn't grown in 5 years. The other thing that we talked about before, this 11 interviews, we found that a lot of you will not do college recruiting, but will do lateral recruiting. So hiring, from a different company. So we found that this is the typical interview process. The most robust interview processes will do a lot of interviews, and it's the equivalent of 11 first dates. The person who is the pickup artist, who knows how to win you over like a pickup artist, will pass these very, very well. So we found it to be like dating. You have a first date. Myself and Megan will sit with someone and we'll sit down and we will interview them and all the vitals get done, and if we like you, you move on to the second date, which is usually 2 to 3 weeks apart. By the second date, we get to difficult questions. We get to why this marriage won't work. We talk about how things will fail. And we want to know, how things will fail, and you have almost a mini squabble or fight. And if you still like each other, you may go for the third date. On the third date, we talk about this give and take notion. We understand what you will give us, all the skills, but why us? What will you take from us? And a lot of people will say, well, I'm going to work for a small company who's growing fast, smart people. And we tell them, do you know how many smart people, small companies growing fast are out there? Tell me why us. And they can't answer. And all the answer is generic. And think of what you can do today. With a click of a mouse, you can apply for 100 jobs, but no one commits to a single one. So if I ever said, I'd like to marry Megan, right? And she asked me, why do you want to marry me? And I said, well, because you're a nice person and you're a girl. And she'll say, yeah, but why me? And that's not enough. And so I may say, you know what, I'm a good catch. If you don't say yes to me, I'm going to go marry and propose to someone else. And you know what she'll say? Well, then we're not meant to be. You'll find that waiting for the candidate who has committed and who wants to be in your company, they have done the research, they understand why you are going to help them, makes a huge difference. So the dating process is something that's critically important. We've built everything now into mobile applications. So in real time, we can actually see data streaming from next jumpers who are actually, while the interview is occurring, talking about who's red hot, who's a red flag. And then we also are very data intensive. We track over time who interviews better for certain characteristics. Who's a better humility interviewer? Who's a better interviewer for give and take? Who's a better interviewer on the second date and so forth? And you can see over time success or failure as people either leave or succeed in the company. Going into onboarding, I'm going to take you through a short video on onboarding that's going to help. And so what's interesting in onboarding is we have tried everything imaginable when it comes to onboarding. And what we have found in onboarding, it's very similar to marriage. Working on developing and changing someone is easier before you get married than after you're married. And so they say you should do marriage counseling before you get married, not after, not in the middle. And we found development to be the same. So we built an onboarding program called PLB, Personal Leadership Bootcamp. It was for new hires, but it was so effective, we now have started to put existing employees, athletes, corporate athletes who are rock stars who go into ruts, into the program. So this is a quick video of a guy named David Bernies. They go through 3 weeks in customer service, and if they don't graduate, they present in front of a panel of senior next jumpers. They get put back into boot camp for as long as it takes in 3-week increments. And this is his final presentation to the committee before he graduated.
So these past 3 weeks, in particular for me, I've had a heightened self-awareness and understanding on receiving a few doses of shocking feedback. I'm embarrassed of the last 3-week PLB checkpoint. Greg, the direct feedback that you provided literally left me speechless. After it, my only outlet was I needed to go for a run. What was so impactful was really not just your words, but the realization that you gathered these thoughts based on listening to so many people. I remember looking at Albert and trying to escape, but the nod of agreement really hit home. The harsh feedback became a starting point. Then the blow really hit when the realization came from Charlie. I can't imagine forgetting his words. He shockingly said to me, "David, you start as what appears to be a great TV show, but then it goes horribly wrong. It will not turn off, and it even worsens. It follows you around." I didn't want to believe it, but the "it follows you around" part I knew was true, so it made me want to investigate if the rest of it was true. That led me to reach out to former coworkers, friends, and family. I needed more data points from people that have known me for many years. What I've become aware of is I'm a selfish listener. It felt horrible, a true failure point. So where does this take me? So disciplined listening is an area of weakness and an opportunity to strengthen my backhand. The project became more important because I had to figure out how to listen and engage CS teams versus alienating them. Thankfully, Ian was still open to helping me with an intense focus of listening. My objective was to be helpful this time versus use the time to start that with a project that would be good for both Ian and others. When I reflect on the last project, it was all burning arrogant. I can't see ever wanting to be the way I was. I continue to practice this in my interactions, whether at home or at work. I have simple rituals that are helping me stay disciplined and catch me in moments of weakness. No cell phones, email introduction, like financially modeling ideas and quantifying the value. The new stories I'm collecting give me strength in a new found way. I see the results and the early signs of it already in the eyes of the people that I'm working with. I'm aware it's early, and I'm very interested in your perspective and observations. Thank you. More importantly, I appreciate your feedback.
Congrats. You passed boot camp.
So what we have found in the wrong ways to onboard, we've tried no training, and literally just said on-the-job training. We've tried delayed training. So we will wait till you build a hunger to learn more, whether it's a week or even a month, and then start training. We've lectured all types of things from values to how the company runs. And remember, usually employees are already sold, but they are being sold even more. And then exercises, all kinds of contrived exercises to onboard them into the culture. None of it worked. None of it really worked, and we tried years of this stuff. However, what we did find is this notion of a fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. The more experienced, the more senior someone is, they tend to come in a fixed mindset that I'm done, I can't change, I'm done growing, take my vessel and use me as much as possible in the company. Versus how do you turn people into this growth mindset? Until the day you die, until the day you have Alzheimer's or whatever else, you will continue to grow. And we found that the beginning was the easiest time to accelerate this growth. So this personal leadership bootcamp was built And once again, for new hires, what we do is we put everyone into customer service, no matter who you are. In fact, the video you saw is an individual, David, who ran a 1,000-employee company as the CEO of an advertising agency. And so for him to go into boot camp is incredibly humbling. And so they go into boot camp and they work on customer service goals of quality and quantity, but the most important project is a side project they have. A side project focused on two things: the self-awareness of yourself. Where have you gone wrong? What we call our backhand, which I'll talk a little bit more in development. The backhand that we all suck at, as opposed to the forehand we're so good at. How do you create balance? Balance so that you actually are able to perform at much higher levels with the foundation of this balance. And so you work on being aware and identifying it, and you share this in front of your colleagues and in front of the senior committee. But then in the course of boot camp, you have to have at least 2 instances where you have actioned and practiced to try to improve your backhand. And so when those things are not authentic, they're not actually good, you fail and you're offered $5,000 at that moment. This is usually on Friday. You can have till Monday to think. You can take that and leave the company, or you can go back into boot camp and there's no sense of when it will end. When we put existing employees into boot camp, we literally transition them completely out of their job. So in this case of David, he runs our merchant team. He's a very, very senior individual in the company. We moved someone else to be a temporary head. His email, when you email him, will actually say, I am going into personal leadership boot camp. I will be there for several weeks because you don't know when it will end. Please contact so-and-so, the temporary head. And the notion is that how many times as an adult do you have a chance to put pause in your life? Not worry about anybody else, whether it's kids, family, whatnot, everyone you worry about, on your teams or at work. Leave all of that, and in this quiet window, while working on customer service tickets, work on yourself. It's a very interesting exercise that people go through, and so that's a piece of boot camp. When you graduate, we do something special. And this is all for new hires. We create a jacket that's embroidered with your name, so it's got your initials as well as the year you started. So for mine, it's Next Jumper since 1994. It's a company meeting. We have a ceremony no different than varsity jackets or the US Open, and you get jacketed, and it's a very emotional window. And that's when you're officially called a Next Jumper. Until then, we don't give you the jacket, but we actually made a slight nuance. The day you start in the company, we make the jackets. And we show you we are committed to having you pass boot camp. But if you do not pass and you choose to leave, we will burn the jacket, because you don't get it unless you become a Next Jumper. Talking of development. And so development is a very tricky thing. A lot of companies and a lot of employees actually crave development. They want to grow, and the number one thing that comes out in development is people want technical training. They want better presentation skills, analytical skills, coding skills, you name it. Everyone craves more development. And they want the company to spend money on this. But we've done a lot of work, and we found that the best training, as in, if you look at the reasons why people do not succeed, usually is not technical. It's almost always slips and gaps in their psychology. A psychological, emotional, wrong decision, typically in poor judgment. Most of your employees, most of your leaders, you want people who make the right calls, who can make the right calls. And what we found over time is that it's really important for them to not work on technical, but on psychological components of how to train. So I'm going to show you a quick video where there's a program we run every month called 10X. And 10X stands for a TV show, I think it's X Factor. So every month in front of the entire company, you come in and a group of 10 people will present for 5 minutes on their contribution to the company, either on culture or in revenue, and then you are judged by the entire company. They have mobile apps. They will rate you at a 4.0 GPA. They will give anonymous feedback, and then a panel of judges will critically give you feedback. And so this is one of our senior leaders, Jackie, giving her presentation at 10X.
Hello everyone, I'm here to do my 10X presentation on culture. So here are my cultural contributions. Not a lot up there. I have to be honest, when cultural initiatives were first announced to the company, I pretty much dismissed them. I thought, this isn't going to lead to my own success. If this isn't going to help me grow as a salesperson and make a lot of money and get promoted, why am I going to do them? Then they got integrated into performance evaluations, and I said, you know what, I'm going to double down in revenue initiatives. And maybe people just won't notice that I'm paying attention to culture. In fact, I was put on these 2 initiatives. I actually didn't volunteer to be on them. But then something happened in Q3 of 2013 that forced reflection and reality. I was removed from the leadership group of the company, removed from MV21, voted by my peers and the most strategic leaders in the company. This was a crushing blow. I was not the success that I thought that I was. However, still being in the fixed mindset and not growing, this is what I thought. I said, oh, those newbies, they'll fail. I'll be back on probably 3, 6, 12 months tops. I'll get back on MV21. I just have to sit and wait. However, as the new group continued to thrive and I continued to flounder, I realized I needed to face the truth. I am selfish, and I put my success above anyone else's. In fact, I spent the past 10 years here trying to climb the ladder of success, trying to get to the top, and leaving others behind me. When I looked at the reality, I had left hundreds of next jumpers behind in my quest to get on top. So now that I've become self-aware, I'm doing deliberate practice. I'm doing deliberate practice through cultural initiatives to change my behavior. Practice to become a steward leader. But again, I have to be honest with this group. There's a driving force behind this. There's actually a fear that is instilled within me to actually make this come true. It's my 2 children. I have twins, they're 3.5 years old. And my biggest fear now in life is that they're gonna develop the same backhand that I have. They're gonna grow up to be selfish and not help other people before they help themselves. So now I'm looking at cultural contributions in a different light, with a purpose, to help develop others, because I know it's integral to my own growth. So old Jackie would have been, get back on MV21 ASAP. New Jackie, I'm trying to do little things to develop new leaders at Next Jump.
Very powerful story with Jackie. She told me that when she went to preschool and she had her parent-teacher review, the teacher was talking about how Lila, her daughter, is the most selfless individual they've met in the class. And that brought her to tears, where that was what she feared most and she worked on for so long. And she has not been able to see until recently that that was the key to unlocking her success at a whole different level. So looking at development and going a step further, we spend a lot of time understanding development, understanding character traits. When you think character, you think about preschool. Think of the last time you were trained in character. You know, how to be kinder, how to be more humble, how to be more confident. All this stuff occurs in preschool, then it's expected that you stop training and learning about character. Well, we found the most important 2 character traits are actually confidence and humility, but it wasn't either one that was important, it was the balance of the 2. So when you are confident and not as humble, by definition, overconfidence is called arrogance. If you are humble but not confident, by definition, that's called insecurity. And at the point of stress, when your guard is down, an arrogant person makes an arrogant call. The insecure person will make an insecure call. The insecure person may be paralyzed, but the arrogant person may bowl people over. And what we found, looking at the tenureship of our employees, was it is a consistently wrong call. The level of consistency was shocking. By individual, how arrogant people kept making the same wrong call, and the insecure people make the same wrong call under stress or when their guard was down. We did a lot of work with this individual named Jim Lear, who runs an amazing institute called the Human Performance Institute. One of the few individuals we met who has worked with both the sports industry, medical doctors, Fortune 500 CEOs, as well as individuals in the military. And he wrote a book called The Only Way to Win. Understanding Aristotle, I guess, had this quote first, but we got it from him, which was that character is a muscle. It's a muscle, and it can be exercised and strengthened. And how many of us actually will say, I am who I am, I can't change. You can't change me. Well, if it is a muscle, when you don't exercise a muscle, it atrophies. And when you exercise it, it gets strengthened and grows. And you exercise it through stress. So what we ended up doing over time, Jim initially started by giving us what he called the 50 character traits, the North Star of character traits, 50 of them. Now, in implementation, what's in theory doesn't always apply. 50 just didn't work. No one's going to remember 50. We couldn't scorecard 50. So we did an 80-20 rule, cut out 80% of it, and got down to 10. And we ran it for 6 months, and we found more people spent time debating of which character trait they were doing well in this and not well in this. And we looked for common patterns, and over 6 months, confidence and humility kept cropping up to the top. And the more research and the more work we did, we found this is the mother of all character traits. The place that we are most in balance is all human beings. And so, for example, I am more confident, as in I am arrogant. Megan is more humble, she's insecure. In fact, arrogant people struggle to use the words arrogant. They always call themselves overconfident. Insecure instantly say, I'm insecure. So being arrogant, I do not have a problem speaking up, being aggressive, being courageous and optimistic, but I must practice my backhand. It's like a game of tennis. Most of us are great at the forehand, but we suck at the backhand. You cannot win a tennis game if you don't know how to play the backhand. You may still win your points with your strong forehand, but the backhand is critical because if you're not balanced, you're not agile on both sides, you will make the misjudgment calls. So we have, for example, in 1-hour meetings, the arrogant people are encouraged to listen for 45 minutes, speak in the last 15 minutes. The insecure people are encouraged to do the opposite. In the first 15 minutes, speak up. And everyone practices their backhands. And so how we practice it, we have many different programs. One is what we call the TP program. It's a co-mentorship program, adding value to each other every single day, 30 minutes a day. This is how you start your day. We say you meet, you vent, and then you go to work. And TP, just like it sounds, toilet paper, it's someone who will take your shit. The amount of toxins we go to work with every day, whether it's I couldn't fall asleep last night, my spouse drove me crazy, my parents drove me crazy, I feel sick, I'm stressed about some bad meeting I had last night, and you're supposed to take all those toxins and go to work at 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. or whatever it is and just be on fire. You can't. You got to get it out of you. It's like the notion of having a good cry. Have you ever had a good cry and you feel pretty good afterwards even though nothing got fixed? You have to get it out of your system. And so venting the toxin to a trusted partner is something that everyone does 30 minutes every morning, and then you have to get to work. You think out loud, you talk out loud, your approach for the day, and someone else, typically an insecure and arrogant, get paired. They can help you identify your blind spots. Megan will constantly tell me, Charlie, like, you seem so confident this is going to work, so certain. You know the last 3 times it didn't work. Maybe you can dial it down a little bit. It's amazing how you can push each other. I will tell Megan, like, you understand the problem, but you know what? Why don't you try it? She's like, it's not going to work. And I tell her, but you know what? You have to try it. Like, you push each other a lot. And the blind spots, like driving a car you don't see, your talking partner helps you see. On a weekly basis, this has been an incredibly effective program. We've replaced most management meetings, what we call situational workshops. It's a coaching session, so one mentor will actually, or one coach will coach 4 people every single week for 1 hour. And they come to the meeting with situations. So these aren't questions of things they haven't done, but a situation is a reflective exercise. Something that you faced last week or the previous weeks, and that you weren't quite sure if it was optimal, and you share your situation, and the coach is able to show you, you thought your choices were this, well, there was a lot more choices you didn't see. And over time, we have seen people grow immensely from these weekly sessions. The 10X that I showed you, once again, mobile apps and everything built, and people are very stressed. And in fact, after you're done 5 minutes, they go into the corner and they ask you, how do you feel? And they tape you for 1 minute. And in the beginning, people are angry, they're upset, they felt belittled, they don't like the feedback they got, the voting is very critical. You should see by the 2nd and 3rd time they present. They're changed human beings. They grow. When it comes to recognition, we have tried everything under the sun you can imagine, and we have found one thing to be the single most important. So we'll take you through some of the mistakes, but one of the first things that happens in recognition is that management picks someone, and you recognize one person to piss off everybody else. How many times I've seen people quit once someone got recognized? I'm like, how do we get it so wrong all the time? You should crowdsource it. Let the crowd vote. Let your employees vote, because when the crowdsourced person comes up on stage, you get a standing ovation. Other thing is how many times we recognize quarterbacks, people who are already paid equity, cash, bonus, everything better than anybody else. You recognize them when you should recognize the linebackers. You want a good team, recognize the people who help them win. And these are the people who do not get the big pay, but they're the ones that are critical for any team to win. At the same time, we tend to recognize intensity, one-off, one-time successes. But just like preschool, the best things are rituals and behaviors. Recognize consistency. The number 1 recognition program we built is what we call the Top 10 Award. The Top 10 Award is like Employee of the Month, but we pick 10 of them. It's crowdsourced every month. We did it manually, but now we have a mobile app where it's a live stock board. It's like a stock ticker of employees who are the most helpful employees. And a simple question, who helped you succeed the most this month? And this is the monthly ritual versus the Avenger is the once a year. Yes, it's more fun to see the Avenger video, but the difference in the company came from this. Performance evaluations. I won't spend a lot of time on this because I know we're tight on time here for the presentation, but every company does this wrong. We have a lot of experts who came and said, not one company have I seen a performance evaluation process that works. They saw ours, and their words were, this is the first one I think that might work. We built a program not on development, but focused on contribution. What have you contributed versus what you've taken? Think of it in caveman days. If you eat a lot, then you have to put back at least the amount of food you ate. But if you have a large family and you ate more as in a team, you have to contribute back the same amount. It's measuring this imbalance of give and take on a 4-point spectrum of do you need improvement, do you meet expectations, do you exceed, or do you far exceed? Exceeding is a one-time brute force thing. Far exceeding is systematic improvements. Bonuses come with exceeding. Far exceeding creates big salary increases. All done on mobile apps. Another thing we learned is this, it's a scheduled event. Performance evaluations is one of those most stressful things. Employees, managers, everyone hates it. It's like 3-4 weeks of just agonizing hell. The employees thinking, how do I possibly put down my application for a raise and promotion through this performance eval? And what we found was when you start to give more time, the same thing comes out anyways. So it's a scheduled event every quarter for 3 hours. It's on everyone's calendar from start to finish. You begin the eval, you end the eval, you're done. We found the same 3 bullet points come out, whether you give them 3 weeks or 3 hours. Mobile apps for this too. Giving back. What we found was giving back is an important part of every company, and every company here probably will say, yeah, we do that. But I'm telling you, most of us, including when we did it wrong. Why employees want to volunteer constantly? There was a professor at University of Georgia who said when jobs are less meaningful, employees are more likely to increase volunteering to gain that desired sense of meaning. People lack meaning, and people end up giving money or physical labor. You want to give your expertise. We code for charitable causes. We even adopted a nonprofit to come to our office for $500,000 worth of rent in New York City for $1 a year. We're looking to adopt someone in Boston. So please, Greg is here. Greg at Next Jump. Let him know if you have a nonprofit you think we should adopt. We even did simple things like make someone's day. And this is the more consistent ritualistic app where you're actually seeing individuals trying to do random acts of kindness to strangers and post up what they've done to inspire everyone every single week. This is a great blog post in the Huffington Post where we make giving back part of your job, part of 9 to 5, part of 9 to 6. It's not something you do in the weekends or evenings. It is 50% of what an employee spends time on. What we found was this. Most of us try to solve things through shortcuts. You want the intense solution, and that's what we put at the foundation. But consistency is the basis of everything we do. For example, when you want to go on a diet, you focus on 3-day liquid diets versus eating breakfast every day. Have an exercise in the month, you're going to go for a long run versus doing twice a week for 30 minutes is far better. Mentorship, quarterly or annually versus every single day, if not every week. At the same time, we give a lot in the holidays. How about giving every single week? That's the way human beings change. And what we found is when you make it cultural, as in you bake it into the rules of the environment, you create a new normal where it's harder to do the wrong thing. It's harder to not exercise, not eat breakfast. It's harder not to be mentored if you're at Next Jump than it is to do the right thing. So a quick definition of culture. Simon Sinek is an individual, if you get a chance to watch his TED Talk, one of the best TED Talk speakers of all time, does this thing of identifying your why you exist, why you do what you do. And I spent a lot of time, he's moved into our offices, understanding his magic trick of identifying people's why. And what we found was there's a pattern. He says the why statement of why you do anything is to do X so that Y. And what he was doing was this, was an exercise of saying, you need to be selfish before you're selfless. You need to focus on your own growth versus the purpose of others. The better me, better you. And when you do this right, you have employees who care and employees who ultimately say, I am proud to be part of this family, this company, this organization. So I'm going to take you through some primary as well as secondary results. And we'll take you through 3 challenges, stories, that most companies face. How do you get the millennial population to succeed? How do you get working moms to be optimized? And then how does a CEO change? How does a leader change? So with that, please.
Okay, so I'm here to share my story. I am a millennial. Now, we don't have the best reputation. I think some words associated with my generation include spoiled, lazy, entitled, to name a few. And I'm not here to prove that those stereotypes are true or not. And I'm not here to claim that I'm a part of the group or not, but I do understand why we have this reputation. This is what the career timeline looks like for most millennials. They get a job, they succeed, but as soon as they hit a point of failure, whether they feel like they're stuck in a rut, whether they feel like they're not making an impact, or they're just struggling in general, they'll switch jobs. And not only are they changing companies, but they're changing industries altogether. I have one friend, she went to fashion school, she graduated, worked in the art industry, changed her mind, she wanted to go back and get her MBA, changed her mind again, she wants to be a lawyer and is currently working as a paralegal. This is completely normal. So the question becomes, what are millennials looking for? And to be honest, I'm not sure we know. I didn't know when I first started at NextJump. But this is my career timeline. Over the span of 3 years, I went from being the receptionist to the head of branding at NextJump. I faced the same challenges and struggles other millennials faced at other companies, but I stayed. So the question becomes, why is my timeline so different? And it's because of two things. As Charlie mentioned, we have both growth and purpose baked into our culture. It's something that I've experienced throughout the past 3 years at NextJump, but I wanted to share two specific stories. So the first one is around growth. It happened when I was transitioning to become Charlie's executive assistant. I tend to skew insecure, so I need to work on my confidence, specifically building my voice. So I want to share a project that helped me do that at NextJump. I was assigned to revamp our corporate website, nextjump.com. This was a huge project, a lot of people go to our website, and I had no idea where to even begin. Some of the thoughts that went through my head is, I don't know how to build content for a website, I have no idea how to code, I don't know how engineers code, I don't know how to work with engineers. Over and over again in my head, I told myself, I cannot do this. I became completely paralyzed and nothing happened on nextjump.com for months. The company seeing this actually created a practice ground where I can practice building my voice and formulating my own opinions. We have these posters in our office that say, make it nice. It originates from a restaurant in Manhattan, and the idea is if you put a lot of love and care into the small details, it'll make a big difference overall. So it's something we believe in NextJump, and we have one poster per floor. Probably the worst place we could put this poster is in the women's bathroom. Everybody would be furious. Why the woman versus the men? Men tend to be more messy. So my task was set. Not only did I have to take the posters and move them into the women's bathroom, but I had to pick 3 individuals that would be most against this, go and have a conversation with them and convince them that this was a good idea. Similar to nextjump.com, I was completely paralyzed. I had no idea where to even begin, and the same thoughts went through my head. But the difference was this was a little bit less risky, and I had to at least give it a shot. So the first 2 conversations, they weren't that bad, I got through them, but I was really scared for this last conversation. I know this individual, she would be very, very upset about moving these posters into the women's bathroom. She was extremely bright, very talented individual. She graduated from Wellesley, so she had very strong opinions. So I sat down, we went back and forth for a long time, and finally came to a compromise. I proposed, I said, listen, this is a trial period. We put the poster in the bathroom for 30 days. If it's a huge problem, we can always change it. And she agreed. So I learned 2 main things from this experience. The first of which, it's better to start. Something bad is always easier to make better. And the second of which is there's no mistakes that are not fixable. I could always change things. I could make it better as long as I got something going. So these lessons translated to nextjump.com. So here's the before and the after. You can see the difference. The reason I was able to get unstuck, unparalyzed, and unafraid was because I had that training ground to learn those lessons. And I found that those lessons actually translated to projects I've worked on since then. The second story I want to share is more around purpose, what we call Better You. And it correlates to a project I've been working on more recently as I've transitioned to head of branding. Our NextJump Academy is our external university where we share our culture initiatives and best practices to CEOs and companies that come in. It's still a platform for me to build my voice and to build my confidence, but the difference is I've taken those lessons from nextjump.com and earlier in my career. So when this was just an idea to the point where we had our first academy session, it only took a week and a half. A very big difference to the months and months and months it took for me to make any movement on nextjump.com. As we're receiving thank you notes from the people that are attending the academy, it's making all of the struggles, all of the challenges, all of the growing pains associated with getting outside of my comfort zone completely worth it. This is just one sample of the many notes we receive. What I've learned today will give me hope for tomorrow. Words cannot describe how much it will help me along the way, and I'm sure all who are there are very grateful as well. I actually come into work every day and feel like I'm making an impact. I'm helping change the world through changing workplace culture. So the question becomes, what's next for me? I actually have no idea again, but I'm sure of 2 things, one of which I will face more struggles, face more challenges, but I will want to do that at NextJump because I found a job where I'm coming into work every day, I'm growing, and I feel fulfilled. So the two things that I work on are speaking up and being aggressive, and how do I actually build my confidence. So with that, I actually want to pass it to Megan, who's going to share her story as well.
I'm going to be quick. I have a different story about being a working mother, and I've already met some working moms here, which has been awesome. So I'm the chief of staff at Next Jump, working mother, and I'll just give you my story and kind of some of my challenges. And this is what most working mothers face, or I should say moms face. Two options. You're going to either stay at home and be with your kid, or you're going to keep working. I actually flirted with the idea of staying home, but I love Next Jump, so I thought, how could I make this work? I'm going to continue working. So I continued to work. But here was the challenge I had. Here was my schedule. I worked 5 to 7 days a week, and this is very normal for the tech industry, information age industries, very fast-paced companies. 70 to 80 hours a week. I was in 6 to 8 meetings a day, reviewing everything in the business, responsible for revenue and culture in the company, effectively the co-CEO of the company. How am I going to do this? And why will this not work? I want to get home to give Matthew a bath. That was very important to me. So little. But in my mind, and I don't know where it came from, but I immediately thought, I've got to get home to give him a bath. It was sacred time that I wanted to have, and I thought, it's going to be all or nothing. I'm either going to get home every day to give him a bath, or I'm not going to get home. And then practicing some optimism, thought, is there some hybrid? Is there some middle ground? And through a conversation with our CEO and the management team said, there's a way to compromise to make this work. What if my new schedule looked like this? What if bath nights were Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday? What if I spent 3 nights instead of 5, getting home by 7 o'clock to give him a bath? My unconstrained nights, therefore, would be Monday and Wednesday. Monday and Wednesday, I would stay at work as late as I needed to get whatever I needed to get done in the business, even exercise maybe once in a while, which is what a lot of moms give up themselves. And then dads, this was interesting for dads. We actually had a hard time. Moms, it was easy to get them to go home Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. But for dads, we said, you also have to do this. I think it changed Charlie as well, to go home 2 nights a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. And so all the moms and dads now, and everybody knows their schedule. At 7 o'clock, I'm gone. And obviously there's exceptions to be made, board meetings, different things we need to do, but this is the norm at Next Jump for the moms and dads. Okay, what I learned from this experience, this image of the straw that broke the camel's back, I think everybody knows this phrase. And what I realized was, it's not all the straw on the camel's back that breaks the back, but it's actually one single straw, when added onto the back, is what breaks the back. So if you just remove that one single straw, and for me, the straw was bath time, I'm gonna get to give Matthew a bath 3 nights a week. I can do that, that's enough. Okay, that was enough until second child, Brendan, came along. That is not enough anymore. Now I have 2 children, 2 little boys. It's not enough to be home at bath time. I need more. And here was where I thought, oh my God, I'm gonna have to quit. This is a few years ago. Brendan is almost 2. And I live really close to the office. I had lunch one day with Charlie while walking Brendan, and the most scary thing I had to say to him, practicing my courage and my optimism, was, when we were in the company together, I said, I think I need to work part-time. This dreaded word of part-time. I'm the only female senior manager in the company. I thought, I can't believe I have to say this, but I want to work part-time. My children are very important to me. And so he said, we can do it. You can do that. And I was elated, but I thought, the company is going to suffer. What are we going to do? How are we going to run the company like this? And he said, it's going to mean that everybody will have to step up to lead the company. Everybody will have to be responsible for revenue and culture in the company. We can't do this anymore from the top down. We're going to have to build a leadership culture. And so my new night, and I'll explain what we did, my new schedule, and this is as of today, is I work Monday through Thursday. I come in at 10. I leave at 5:45 to let my nanny go. And then on Fridays, I take the day off. I bring Matthew to school. I do a few errands while he's in school for a few hours. I pick him back up, and then I have the rest of the day to get done what I need to do. Sometimes I run into the office. I live next door. Use the gym, whatever I need to do, but I use that day for me and to be with my children. Okay, the single most innovative, in addition to this schedule that I have that I love and has been working for me, the company is the most successful it's ever been. You would think that, okay, I'm working part-time, how could that be? We created a new organizational design in the company. So I'm going to show you how it works. We call it FLOW. It stands for Follower Leader Organization, creating more leaders out of followers. So it works like this. Your right or left hand, you actually become the captain. Once you're the captain, you eventually become the coach. Coaches eventually become right and left hands. Every culture and revenue initiative in the company is organized like this with this 4-person team. The single best innovation here is the coach, and I'll explain just using driver's ed real quick because I think I'm going over a little bit. Think about yourself when you learn to drive a car and you're at the wheel, you're the captain, you're at the wheel. The coach is actually the driver's ed instructor. The driver's ed instructor is not going to ever grab the wheel, but they have a brake. So as a coach, they can actually see what's happening, they can look around, they can make sure that, they're basically the eyes and ears for the captain learning how to drive this car. So that coach role is the single biggest innovation we have because you're removing your top players and doers in the company and making them a coach. So this investment is very slow to start, but over time you actually build a much stronger company, and the bench strength of the company is a lot stronger. And having run this now for years, the bench strength we have in the company is actually giving me a chance to actually be home with my children and letting all the other mothers and fathers in the company do the same thing. So in hindsight, what I was practicing was my courage and my optimism to speak up, to think that after one that I could make it work, after 2 kids that I could make it work, was kind of impossible to me, but it's working. And I think the stress of being a working mother was the best catalyst for my own growth and created a new organizational design in the company, which is very exciting.
So I want to share a quick story where around a year and a half ago, I sat in this round table with the who's who of leaders. It was a provost of San Diego. It was the head of Google's international operation, the board member of NBC Universal, the individual who opened the most churches. And the topic was the topic of, can leaders change? Can they change? Can they change styles? Can they change? And of 20 individuals, 19 said, nope, can't change. Leaders are who they are. But by the time it got to my turn, I said, actually, that's not true. They can totally change. So let me tell you the story of how I changed. Because I used to be a leader that led with, people were fearful of me. I led with an iron fist, never once showed vulnerability in the company. And so I get invited to go to this off-site retreat by Simon Sinek. So Simon holds this 15-person retreat called Massive in Aspen. So they pick you up on a private jet, and they literally 15 amazing leaders, and we do things like putting fire down our mouths and all kinds of bonding exercises. It's a 3-day retreat to talk about how to make the world better. And so as I go to the retreat, halfway through, this is Friday afternoon, I realize that nobody wants to really talk about problems. They want to just talk about stroking each other's ego. And so I was very frustrated. Midway through the retreat, I just wanted to go home. I don't need to be in Aspen. I don't need private jets. I want to be home with my son. And so there's an email I received from my wife, which I ended up writing a note on my BlackBerry. Literally, in rage and anger, I fired off a note at around noon on Friday to all the employees in the company. And this is a picture of my 3-year-old son then, Jackson in the front, his best friend Lennox with his father sitting on his lap. And this is the note I wrote to our employees. As I sit here surrounded by 15 of the most inspiring people on this planet, many ideas and thoughts on how we can adopt great things into our company, into our families, I want to share a personal struggle with both this trip and something I made a big mistake on this week, not being there for my son Jackson. Next Jumpers, we trust you to take care of us like we take care of you. Always, always speak up if your child's graduation, important family event is coming up. We want to do everything we can to support you and make certain that you make this important meeting. We built a company where everyone matters, and we watch each other's back. That is the only way this will work. When we help each other out, when we help each other fill in the little gaps to you, that is a big gap for someone else. I missed Jackson's soccer graduation this past Wednesday because I had set up calls with Jeffrey's bankers. See below pictures of his graduation and, more importantly, what happened. Guess at soccer graduation, Lennox, Jackson's best friend, his dad Lee was there, made Jackson sad. He sat on Lee's lap the whole time. They had to bring the medal to him. My wife wrote to me as I left her house Thursday morning, 5 a.m. for a massive offsite with Simon Sinek. Jackson was sad this morning when I told him you were on a trip. He responded, he went without me? I'm so sad. Maybe when you get a chance, you can call and speak to him. I fired this note off to our employees. And I don't know if you know, but when CEOs send notes to employees, you get no response back. You literally get none. I had over 100 responses in the next hour. They range from, this is a great email you sent, totally humanizes you, to I love and hate this email, empathize, sorry you missed graduation. My nanny wrote a note too. I could never speak up. Charlie, your note made me cry. He was upset at the soccer graduation day. I tried all my best, but I realized nobody in this world can take mom and dad's place. But afterwards, he was fine, going on the carousel, going on the picnic. So as the retreat ended on the last day on Saturday, everyone went around the circle, sharing their biggest insight, their biggest lesson. And I read the email I had sent in rage on Friday to the whole group. And as I read it, I found myself physically shaking and crying as I read this to the 15 leaders in the room. And I did not know what I was doing. Afterwards, 8 of the individuals came up to me and said, Charlie, that was the most powerful leadership exercise, event, action I've seen to date. Why don't you lead with vulnerability more? We knew you were bright, we knew you were sharp, we knew you were smart, but we did not see the vulnerable side. And since that day, I've practiced vulnerability at a whole different level. And as I practice, I've gotten better. In fact, you can over-practice. Megan would remind me every now and then, stop crying in the office every week. People think you're a wuss now, so you got to start being back strong again. A very simple but important quote. When you see no change in your people, you will not see change in the business. But when you see transformational change in your people, you will see transformational change in your business. This is a busy slide, but this is a timeline of some of the things that happen in the company. And what's fascinating is this. The red marks revenue goals we kept missing, and the green marks revenue goals we kept exceeding or hitting. We were growing at 25% year over year. Numbers getting bigger and bigger in e-commerce every year for 5 years straight. For the last 2 years now, we've been growing over 100%. And what's fascinating was this. Turnover shot down first. It went from 40 to virtually nothing, and nothing happened for around 6 to 9 months. It's like going to the gym. You want to work out and look better, but you look in the mirror and you're like, nothing changed. Next morning, you're sore. Changing people takes time. And the most important thing we found was that we were able to grow our leaders. We have this term, CEO -2. The revenue of the company is run 2 levels down from myself and Megan, allowing us to spend a lot of time on other things. Turnover goes down. People who surveyed in Next Jump say, I love my job. Nobody used the word love with job. We get awards, revenue shoots up. And this is our best thinking to date. And we believe in being a teaching organization, like a teaching hospital. The first thing we talked about in the beginning, culture is universally definable. Whether you take the better me plus you equals us, whether you use growth and purpose in some way, no matter what size company, this is how human beings operate. And when the right culture is put into place, the results are measurable. It shows up in your employee loyalty. It shows up in employees giving it their all because they love their job. It shows up in leaders stepping up and running and taking ownership of the company. It shows up in your revenue numbers. And the number one most important comment I hear from Next Jumpers today is to say, I'm proud to be a Next Jumper. So, thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Elise. I'm going to give you just a minute or two. If you did have questions that came to mind, the note cards at the table, jot them down. We're going to do a little Q&A here in just a second. After a minute or two of time for folks to jot down questions, one of my colleagues, probably Matt or Ina, will be around to pick up any note cards. As you're thinking, I'm going to go ahead and start them off with a couple of questions. Had the privilege of spending some intense time there a little while ago, and so I want to pick up on a couple of themes that I had the opportunity to sort of observe, and so if you're ready, okay.
Fire away.
All right, great. One of the things, I'm just going to give a little preamble here. I was there actually in real time when, with Bob Keegan, with Matt Miller, with Claire, we were there in real time when we saw the presentation by Jackie that you saw, the one, I've been a selfish person for 10 years presentation. And I can say we were all, our hearts were, sort of coming out of our chest as we observed this presentation. What Charlie didn't share, that I'm going to give you a window on and invite you to comment on, was that as part of their rating, that there's a table with, in this case, it had Charlie and Megan and Tom, one of also their senior leaders, and they have paddles in front of them. And each of them have paddles numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so after a little bit of time to collect their thoughts regarding the presentation, they lift up their rating of the presentation. Now I'm sitting there thinking that if this isn't a 4 in terms of a presentation, I'm not sure, I don't know what a 4 would be. I'd like to ask Charlie and Megan, who were at that table in the Simon Cowell and Paula Abdul roles, if you might comment a little bit on that, and I'll also say, if you might work into your comments something you said to me later related to no baby food. Okay.
So it's a 1 through 4 ranking, and it's not that rare. There's a lot of companies who do these. I think they call them, there's all different things that they call them. We call it 10X, but we use a scale 1 through 4. And 1 just stands for you need improvement. 4 is you've exceeded our expectation. So there is far exceeded our expectation. 2 is, you met. 3 is you've exceeded, far exceeded. And so we give and so at the highest level, when we think about the 10X almost like a board meeting. Think about how much practice senior managers get in reviewing and presenting their business every quarter. And how do you create that same stress, but also this need to practice what you've contributed to the company on a quarterly basis? Usually other employees don't get that opportunity, but that's where a lot of growth comes from, at least in our industry, in the tech industry, and startup companies. And so we make all of our employees do this. It's, they do it once every 6 months on revenue and culture. And at the highest level, we want to see that they contributed to the business, that there's results, there's an impact on the business. And so that's where you're more likely to get the 3 4s. If you're aware, and I think Jackie showed, she was very aware of what she needs to work on, she's most likely I think she got 2s across the board. And so it's, from an awareness point of view, is part 1, know where you need to improve. If you've actually actioned that and you've made a difference in the business, you're more likely to get a 3. If it was a brute force, one-time thing you did, it was great, you're gonna get a 4 if it's recurring, and it's every week you've made a systematic improvement in the business. And it actually correlates to how we do performance evaluations too.
So when you think about this, what we found was this: a lot of people like to go for awareness, so it's tied to willpower. I now know what I've done wrong, so next time I'll do it right. And how many times do you see that doesn't happen? And so we find that unless you've built rituals and behaviors into your life that start to support you in the process and practice this, you will not change, you will not grow. And so in Jackie's case, she had the awareness, she had the insight, but not enough clear definition of practice. And so this question of baby food, what we find is that we do not sugarcoat or coddle in any way. In fact, we tell employees, you should have had enough baby food from your mother. But what we are doing for you is giving you sunshine. We're going to give you sunshine because most people do not tell you the truth of what is happening in your life. And to find someone who cares about you deeply and will give you sunshine is the most valuable coach you could find. And so that's what we spend time doing. And so Jackie, I think, got a 2. Just this past Friday, we had 10X again. I gave the first 4 that we ever gave. And it was an individual who not only had awareness, who had practice, who had shown results, but then still had the humility and the hunger to get better. And that's what gave her the 4.
One other question, then we'll collect some more and hear from folks. I observed during a visit very smart engineers operating some of the time as cooks, waiters, and custodians. Could you speak to that, and what's the thinking behind that, and a little bit about that program, how systemic that is?
You want to talk about it? Yeah, so what's fascinating is I think most people here probably are married. And so I don't know if you're the breadwinner at home or not, but what tends to happen in most families is you have the CEO of work and you have the CEO of home. And you tend to sort of gravitate to one side. And if you're the CEO of work, you may come and do a lot less home stuff. And if you're the other way around, and so what is interesting though is if you want to have a successful relationship at home, you need to every now and then flip roles. You need to be the CEO of home, even if you're usually the CEO of work. Because if you came home and said, I'm the breadwinner, I don't touch a dish, I don't clean up anything, in fact, I leave my clothes on the ground, everyone must take care of me because I bring home the bacon, trust me, that relationship isn't going to work. Because it's not about being the expert at home, but you have to have the appreciation for what the other person does. And so we found the same thing in culture, we found the same thing in running companies. It takes a lot to run a company. It takes a lot, besides the cleaning staff, how to make sure everyone is fed, everyone's exercised, the office is neat and clean and the right things are in place. And by putting engineers, these rock star, human capital talent sought by everyone, into these humbling roles, this is like 1 or 2% of maybe what they do, but what it does is it creates this gratitude. We have a project called Hallway Initiatives, where every part of the office is owned by someone, and when it's wrong, like the bathroom will say, Nyan, why the hell is the bathroom messy? We have cleaning staff, but we say, why is the bathroom messy? And this engineer will say, well, it's first not my fault and all this stuff, but eventually he starts to feel responsibility, and when you feel responsibility for one area of the office, you start to treat every other area better. And so we have found importance in actually creating, in essence, chores and very humbling work in amongst the most important work they do.
Let me draw on some questions from folks here. So what aspect of your culture or kind of the shift in culture do you feel most tentative or uncertain about?
Uncertain. I think you guys can answer too, but I think the area that we get questioned the most about is actually how much we give. I've had 2 board members who literally tried to remove me out of the company as CEO over the last 2 years because we donate around $10,000 per employee in cash contributions. Then we have a lot of, from office space and whatnot, and that's a lot for a company, even our size. And it's something that we believe is fundamentally in our DNA of giving back, and if you don't, you end up building sort of a vanity prima donna culture of just getting bigger and better and looking good for your selfish sense. And it's so ingrained in what we do, and yet investors and board members don't really buy into that very well. It's more of a checkbox. And so probably the greatest tensions we've had with even internal employees, outside critics and whatnot, has been around how much we give.
I'll give my point of view as well. Uncertainty, because we've never done it before, is scaling the business. We have 200 employees. I'm sure there's a lot of thought around we're not a large organization, and so we haven't done it yet. But I think that going from 4 employees to where we are now and running the company this way, I feel very encouraged by it. But there's uncertainty just only because we haven't gotten there yet, and I think that's probably where some criticism will come in.
Okay. So many folks in here are seeking to lead organizations where they can't completely control the hiring or firing, or they're in a place in the organization where they can't completely control it. What recommendations do you have when you can't screen as much on the front end?
Can't screen as much on the front.
Yeah.
Even if it's a volunteer organization, per se, potentially, where...
So I think when it comes to hiring, one of the first important investments we had to make was increasing the top of the funnel. You need more people to apply. When more people apply, especially at the same time, it's amazing your ability to seek out the top talent. If you had 1,000 people apply at once, you're not going to hire the worst person. And your elevation of what is the best is going to go up. The reason why college recruiting became so critical is that there's no place where that many graduates come in through, trying to get into your door all at one same time. Lateral recruiting and hiring happens all sporadically, so you cannot get that concentration. But when you get a large group of people, it's like a nightclub. If you look at the lines, the longer the line, the more choice you have of who's beautiful is going to go in, or who's wealthy is going to go in. It's the same thing in companies. The longer the line, the funnel, if you invest in college recruiting, you have the ability to get that much talent trying to go in at once. And then even those who interview from a company with no guidance, their expectations just elevate up because every candidate says, well, that one's better, and it moves up. So
I would also say, though, but if you can control the interview itself, right? Maybe you can't control everything else, but if you can control the interview, I do think the humility in all the ways to screen for that. I mean, we're happy to share what we have a whole script that we try to follow and look for red flags because that is such an important ingredient.
Try that one question.
Oh, I'll give you an example. We had a receptionist, so we actually interviewed a receptionist for months. It took forever. And she came in, and the question I asked her was, why will this not work? So it was the second interview I had with her. I asked her, and she was very young, why this will not work out. Pretend you took the job, and 90 days from today, you decided to quit. I didn't ask you to leave, we didn't ask you to leave, but you decided to quit. Why will that be? It's a great question. It's basically talking about divorce, which is kind of uncomfortable, but you need to know. And she said, well, in 90 days, if I didn't get to meet with all the senior managers, learning from them, I didn't get to work on all the giving back, initiatives, I get to work on all the most important strategic projects, then I think that would probably be a reason why I would leave. And I just looked at her like, oh my God, in 90 days you want to do all that? And it was just very obvious that there was a mismatch. And again, that's just an example of if you ask the right questions, you kind of get to the truth and you get to the challenges faster.
Okay. How do you go about pairing people for the co-mentorship for the talking partners?
So the ideal pairings come in someone who is, for example, Megan's insecure, I'm arrogant. We make a great pairing because we see each other's blind spots. But even above that is actually this element of responsibility and trust that someone has in each other. If you think of coaching, think about the fact that you may hear, for example, spouses, this is typical. I'll say something to her and she'll be really angry at me. Someone else will say the exact same thing 5 minutes later and she'll say, that's exactly what I need to hear. Thank you for giving me such tough, good feedback. And use the word trust. The trust has to do with intent. My intention with my spouse may have been, and she may think, to show her that I'm smarter and better than her, versus maybe from somebody else, they truly care to help her grow. So this trust between people with the right intentions to push each other for growth is probably the single most important thing, and it tends to come with joint or shared responsibility and stress. If someone is it's like finding a parent with 2 kids and finding a parent with, or actually someone with no kids. They will struggle because they don't share the same stress. When they're stressed together, bonding occurs, and then they look to help each other through it. So that's what we look for above all else.
How would you suggest an organization, particularly the senior leadership of an organization, begin to put new cultural practices into place, into action? What do you see as sort of the most promising entry points?
So the main part, I would say, is it's situational. It's situational because it depends on what stage of the company you're in. If you're in aggressive growth mode and you're hiring and onboarding, that's where you're going to start. If you have an existing base and you want to grow that existing base, then development programs and recognition might be the most important thing. If you are at a state where you're mature enough and you can survive, putting in giving back programs as well as even performance evaluations to measure and monitor the whole base. So I think it'd be very dependent on kind of what state someone is in. I'll give you some examples if that'd be helpful.
I think in development, just on that, say you're trying to grow your existing staff, which may be the situation. The situational workshops, I think, was one of the fastest ways to get started and implement a program, because it was really just replacing a lot of the weekly manager reviews and meetings that you may be having. And we started just with our senior management team. So for instance, if Charlie came into the situation workshop, he has 4 people reporting into him, we still all bring a situation. And so by him actually mentoring the 4 of us, we are now also in charge of mentoring another group of 4 people. So what ends up happening is that from just one person starting this process, we actually, as now a senior management team, cover 80 employees in the company are getting this weekly mentorship in these situational workshops.
It's a key insight we found was, if you want to be a good student, you have to eventually put them in a position to teach. And so everyone I mentor for 1 hour a week, they are actually teaching and mentoring themselves for 1 hour a week. And so there's like a tree-like structure where the 4 people I mentor actually train 16 people, 4 each. And so that's 20 total that are covered sort of through my mentorship and coaching. And it's amazing where most companies will struggle because you don't have enough excellent managers, excellent coaches, but there's always a handful. And so the ability to scale the handful, I do 4 hours a week in situational workshop coaching. That totals up to 80 individuals that I myself cover through those 4 groups of 4 who then go to 4 each. It's amazing how scalable it becomes, and it's had a profound impact on people growing.
what's the hardest feedback that you get from employees about their experience working in the company? What is it that's the toughest for you to hear? What is it that you wish you would, you'd like to be getting better at? What's the hardest feedback that you get? Elise, do you want to jump in?
So I can't speak for Charlie and Megan on the hardest feedback, but I do think one thing that has helped with the culture and kind of getting some of that feedback was when we declared the intention. So putting on the walls, the better me, better you, better us. We, as a company, want to make a promise to actually help you grow. I think set that context so when people, are getting feedback, are growing, are helping others, whatever it may be, no matter what their criticism or skepticism may be, it helps having that context of what we're actually trying to do as a company. So I can't speak for Charlie and Megan what kind of the feedback that they've received has been, but I know putting that on the walls has helped people understand what we're trying to achieve as a company. So
Actually, Lisa brings a good point, because I think the biggest challenge has been, sort of from our side, feeling misunderstood, whether it's outside or inside. And misunderstood can range from, why are you being so mean? Are you having a bad day? Why are you taking it out on me? And why are you focused so much on my weakness when we don't celebrate and hear and talk about my strength enough? And so there's a lot of discussion along that route, this focus of being misunderstood. But Elise is hitting up on a critical thing that flipped that for us, which was timed when our turnover shot down as well, which is how we took this insight from preschools of how to use the walls of your office as canvas. Do not put art, policies, and procedures. Instead, put the evidence of what you're doing. So you write up what you intend to do, which is every investment in our culture is going to be better me, better you. It's going to be an investment in helping you grow for the purpose of helping others. And then walls are dedicated to literally proof points and pictures of all the better me programs and success stories, all the better you programs and success stories. And one day, what happens with employees, they walked in and they got the context. They were like, I get it. They're not doing it to be mean. They're not doing it. What they say and what they do authentically matched up. And so that tipping point occurred literally with the walls of the office.
That's great.
But until then, it was very misunderstood.
Okay. Last question, and then I want to frame up our lunch activity. For Charlie, and I'm actually going to include others, Megan and Elise, in this as well too. For Charlie, what are you doing to grow and develop? To other next jumpers get to see it. And to tag in on that, I also want to ask Elise and Megan, if you would, to share what's the toughest feedback you've ever given Charlie? Okay, so wherever you want to.
So I think the three things I spend time doing is literally experimenting on myself above all else aggressively, and then teaching as soon as there's a morsel of an insight, because that tells you the gaps in everything you did that you thought was good. You start to realize, oh, these difficult questions haven't been resolved. And then you iterate through that experimentation teaching process, and eventually when things seem to work, you try to scale it through designing programs. So the biggest thing I do is put myself out of my comfort zone. For example, even in presenting, I've never given the same presentation twice. And it's something that it would be a lot easier. We have a lot of material just to give the same thing. And even the DDO presentation, we put it together in the last 3 days. It's very stressful and the reason we wait is because we know new things develop, that we want to give the most cutting edge insight. We don't want to show you something from last year or 3 months ago. We want to give you the best view we have as of today. So which is why we said it's as of June 2nd. This is our best knowledge. But that's stressful. So we put a lot of stress on ourselves that way.
Megan and Elise.
Can I have us feedback today?
Yes.
Or do you want to know what I'm doing to grow?
Why don't you do both? Do both. Yeah.
Let's talk about this first.
All right.
All right. Okay. So I know the toughest feedback I gave Charlie, and this may not sound as harsh to you, but it was interesting. So 2 years ago, we have an offsite in Martha's Vineyard, which is why our leadership team is called MV21, and we do we actually do performance evaluations. We do basically in small teams. So it was our senior management team. So it was myself, Charlie, 3 other individuals sitting down, and we share what we're good at and where we need development. And so when it comes to Charlie's turn, it's always a little tricky because you're giving the CEO critical feedback. And what I told him was very interesting. I told him that he was so focused on helping the world get better, and you don't know Charlie's background and his father and all the things he's tried to do in solving world hunger. He's comes from this DNA of really wanting to change the world, and I'm very inspired by that, and I want to be a big part of that, and it's a big part of why I love Next Jump. But what I told him was, I can't do this if I feel like my house is falling apart. A little dramatic, it's not quite falling apart, but what I told him was very in line with kind of this better me, better you. We were so focused and obsessed about the better you. The amount of money we give to charity, the amount of time and investment we give, and what we do to help others, mentoring in New York City, teaching, I mean, the amount of time we are spending not on ourselves is pretty significant, and I told him we just have to make sure that we are balancing that with taking care of ourselves. And so it was hard for him to hear, because I think he always felt that we were taking care of Next Jumpers just as much, but it was pretty clear to me that I saw that we needed to actually more sort of double down back on our own employees so that we can help the world.
I've learned, Megan's always right. It just takes me some days to
Yes.
actually marinate and register it.
Gets angry and then it gets to acceptance.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing we have Megan here too, and they're co-CEOing together. So I think one time, I guess, I don't know if it's like harsh feedback or most direct feedback, but I remember specifically when Charlie and Simon Sinek were just starting to get to know each other very well, and we first started working on this character imbalance. So it was a while ago before kind of Charlie identified this vulnerability that he wanted to work on and the power of it. And I think Simon challenged me, and he said, working closely with Charlie, like, what do you think that he needs to work on? And it was very clear that he was more on, that overconfident, arrogant side. And I think what came to mind is this idea of patience. And not patience in the sense that you would think of, because I think Charlie has an extreme amount of patience. I mean, as somebody that he's coached, I've seen it. And you kind of see my career timeline, and he has stuck with me, and he has that patience. But he can get extremely excited, very inspired. So just that whole idea of just having a little bit more patience and waiting for everybody else to kind of catch up with him so we can all run together. And just like a tiny example is, I know for the Academy when we were talking about mobile apps, and it was just like we want to actually share them with everybody. And the Academy, which we kicked off in March, he was like, and by June, or it was even sort of like by May, we're going to share them with the whole world. I was like, Charlie, I can't get it so that we're sharing, mobile apps with everybody, come May. I might need a little bit more time. So just that idea of patience and just kind of waiting for everybody to kind of catch up with him, I think would probably be it.
Very hot.
Okay. Well, I would ask you to join me in thanking the folks from Next Jump.